Chris. We do have quorum. Just wanted to update you.
Sounds good. Jeff, no music today, huh?
You got to come to the subcommittee meetings for that.
Okay. All right.
Enticement for sure.
All right. Yep. Cool. Well, I have sort of been asked to help out with sort of co-hosting. I mean, we're down a co-host or a co-chair right now anyway. So I'm sure that that our co-chair Tamisha will be on, but if there are no objections to me sort of taking over those duties, at least until she gets on, we could start.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Well, in that case, I would like to welcome you all to the Racial Justice Oversight Body quarterly meeting, and ask for some introductions, or for everyone to just get a chance to sort of introduce themselves. And usually the way that we do this, because especially in this meeting, well, I shouldn't say usually, but the way that I've seen it done in some subcommittee meetings, right, is because we have so many members, we have the members introduce themselves, and then we have other folks chime in the chat so that it doesn't take up too much of our time, but we still get a sense of who's here, what organizations you represent, and so on and so forth. So although I am not a member of the RJOB, I don't mind modeling the introduction. So here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris James. I am a Racial Justice and Wellbeing Associate with the W. Haywood Burns Institute. And I am going to pass to my friend, Jeff.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you stepping in at this moment and facilitating us. Jeff Landau, Racial Justice Coalition Steering Committee member, and also a public defender in Contra Costa County. Really glad to be here. I'm subcommittee chair of the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee of this oversight body. And I will pass to Destiny. Oh, no, excuse me. I was supposed to choose someone on our members of the board altogether rather than just choosing someone from community. And I'm not sure if I should pass then to Lynn. May I?
Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you. I'm Lynn Mackey. I'm the County Superintendent of Schools for Contra Costa County. Isa, I think, is a member. Isa might be having audio issues. That's right. She has.
Can you guys hear me? I'm on like several devices. I'm going to be logging on to an entirely different computer because right now this is taking too much. I'm in Juvenile Hall, so I apologize, everyone. Good afternoon, Isa Eman-Krause, Chief Probation Officer. I missed the instructions. Is anything else needed of me? Okay. Well, I'm going to log off and log on a different device, and hopefully I can hear everybody better. Sorry about that.
It may be easier to have Nicole do a roll call to help facilitate this.
Okay. I'm happy to do that if everyone is okay with that.
Definitely okay with that. And it might be apparent to everyone that Stephanie was a former co-chair of the RJOB.
Okay, Matthew. Matthew, I think we're having trouble hearing you, unless it's just me not able to hear you.
I had that also.
Okay. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you. I will move to Melissa.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Melissa Clavoon, and I'm an assistant sheriff at the Sheriff's Office.
Ellen?
Hi, good afternoon. Ellen McDonald. I'm the interim public defender. Good to see you all.
Dinah Becton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dinah Becton, District Attorney.
We have LaShante on. No? What about Dr. Walker?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Walker, Director of Legislative and Governmental Affairs for the Health Department.
Michael.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Pearson. I'm a private attorney with Key Counsel PC, and I hold a seat for someone with prior criminal or juvenile justice system involvement.
Shayla.
Hello, everyone. Shayla Bonner here, Racial Justice Coalition member and program manager with Safer Time Project.
Stephanie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Stephanie Medley with RISE.
Ronell.
Ronell Ellis, Field Operations Coordinator with Health Right 360 Reentry Network.
Cheryl.
Cheryl Sudeth, also with Racial Justice Coalition Steering Committee. And today's celebration of Diwali. And it is Native American Heritage Month. Yay.
Okay, I think that's everyone. We just have a couple, LaShante Smith and Tamisha Walker, I believe are not here yet, but hopefully will join us shortly.
All right. Well, thank you all for those introductions, as well as for those of you who introduced yourself in the chat. Now we will open it up to public comment. So this is public comment on any item that is not currently covered on the agenda. And that's just because, of course, for every other item that you see, we're gonna open the floor for public comment on each one. So we welcome you all to introduce yourselves and give any public comment on any item that's not on the agenda at this time. And I see Doug Leach's hand.
Yes, good afternoon. And I'm Doug Leach with the Multi-Faith Action Coalition and the Racial Justice Coalition. And I wanted to thank you for at your last quarterly meeting, taking action to forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to explore establishing an office of independent oversight of the sheriff, of the Sheriff's Department. And I wanted to, I didn't see that any follow-up on the agenda for today's meeting, but I hope that there will be follow-up actions taken by this board. Thank you.
Thank you. And next I see Jane Current. Jane, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good to be here with all of you today. I'm also a member of the Racial Justice Coalition, Surge, Contra Costa, and I'm the Richmond Progressive Alliance rep to lift up Contra Costa. I'm pretty much going to echo what Doug has said. It's really gratifying to see the establishment of the independent monitoring body moving forward, especially now as the new state law has changed. And this is something that I think our county needs. It's long overdue. We've worked hard, as I know the task force did, and I appreciate this board's moving this forward. I'd also just like to say that there are a number of other wonderful recommendations that came from that task force. And I'm looking forward to this board being proactive in really keeping the county on track to follow through, because I think a lot of people in the community feel there hasn't been the follow through, and the need is still there. There is still a great deal of injustice, as I think everybody in this room knows. So I thank you for the time and appreciate all the work that has gone on here and in the few subcommittee meetings I've managed to attend. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we all appreciate having community members from the public just to refresh for us, right, what our charge is, what we're doing here, and to keep us on track as well. I see Destiny's hand next.
Hi, thank you so much, and thank you for your service. I'd just like to indicate, my name is Destiny Briscoe, and I'm a member of ACE. I'd like to insist that the County Board of Supervisors form a citizen oversight of the Sheriff's Department. I'd also like to indicate that my brother was killed by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department last year. It is very devastating to have to relive the fact that he will never come home. We need to ensure that citizens in our county do not have to continuously go through not having their loved ones come home, and that there is checks and balances with the Sheriff's Department. My understanding is that they have a slogan where it's to protect and serve. But when that protection starts to stand for protecting their own instead of protecting the city and the communities that they serve, it becomes problematic. So I just urge you to insist that this Board of Supervisors form a citizen oversight of the Sheriff's Department. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you taking the time to hear what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing that. The floor is open for any remaining public comment before we move on. Okay, seeing none. Again, I want to thank everyone who chimed in on public comment. Clearly, these are really important issues. Clearly, they are important to you, to all of you. And you know, we appreciate all of the context and the personal experience and the passion that you bring to it that fuels the work that this body is charged with. And Nicole is sharing the screen to move us along in the agenda to item number 3, which is approval of record of actions from the previous quarterly meeting. Did you want to scroll through some of the record, Nicole, just in case? Give folks a chance to review it. I'm sure most of you have this up on your own screens, but just in case you don't, just give you a visual. Jeff, see your hand. You're on mute.
Thanks. Yeah. Just maybe it's point of clarification rather than a modification, and it's related, I think, also to the public comment we were just receiving, that item 4 here that's memorialized and the motion that passed is there's a status update, that there's a way and/or for our discussion at this time of how that makes its way to the Board of Supervisors. As you know, we clearly were saying that it urgently ought to be presented the last time around, and before we're approving this is kind of procedurally, where does that stand in terms of making its way to the supervisors?
I guess the update would be from ORJ that we have a follow-up with the CAO's office, and I do believe that we have a representative from the CAO's office that might be able to provide more context. But that's the follow-up that we have from our side, is to get direction from how to push this forward.
Thanks, Nicole. And if there is from CAO, that would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, Paul Reyes, Senior Deputy County Administrator. I work primarily with the public safety departments, public protection departments. Regarding this particular recommendation, we are in communication with ORJ in terms of like what the next follow-up is. Likely, we'll take it to the Public Protection Committee, at least first, and then get direction from there on where it goes. I do, though, want to just make it clear that, you know, one of the recommendations from the original Racial Justice Task Force did include establishing an independent monitoring body for somewhat the sheriff's office, I guess. Yeah, I'm looking at the recommendation now. I think it's primarily adult detention, but generally speaking, the sheriff's office. That wasn't included as part of the recommendations that were ended up being forwarded to the oversight body for implementation. So I don't know how the board will, decide on this particular issue, but, we'll take it to the PPC first and then go from there.
Sure. And I can say as just context that that was the nature of the vote last time, was acknowledging that this had been presented but hadn't moved forward because there was a question in terms of statutory authority. And now that the law has passed, there isn't any sort of barrier. So it was in that context that we're re-presenting. Can I just briefly on the same point ask if there is any indication of timeline for going to the PPC?
No, because right now we don't have a scheduled meeting. So we might have one in December if I could get both board members' schedules on the same page. If not, then it'll be early 2022. The meeting schedule for the subcommittees of the board hasn't been set yet, nor has the composition of the subcommittees been made. So it's kind of a pending, hopefully December. If not, then early next year, next calendar year.
The last word I would say on this would be that in light of this already having been vetted and considered historically, as you were mentioning, Paul, by the full Board of Supervisors, I would hope, and I am not in charge of it, but I would hope, as sitting as I am as a member here, that this would come before the full Board of Supervisors sooner, in light of, it was really the tenor of the conversation last time, that the desire to do it, but the restriction, and now that that's gone away, perhaps it could be considered by the Board of Supervisors in its entirety sooner, rather than, especially in light of the subcommittee process being somewhat uncertain, the schedule you were mentioning. But I invited others to chime in.
Yep, and Cheryl has her hand raised. So Cheryl.
Thank you so much. Yes, I have my hand raised. Thank you, Jeff. And yes, I'm going to chime in because this is exactly what happened before, because it was mainly law enforcement who spoke up to table this before, when the public was crying for this. And I'm just going to say what it is. It was lack of so-called statutory authority that was used as an excuse. And so the excuses are gone. So Paul, with all due deference, it's gone. And the public is the reason the public is here speaking out right now. And if you're watching the screen, they're shaking their head because they're tired of the excuses. And I believe they're a little disgusted with hearing that you don't know when the meetings are. I get it. We're getting ready in December to change over leadership with the Board of Supervisors. But we already know that Supervisor Mitchell is going to be the chair. We already know that usually means that the chair is going to be one of the people on the Public Protection Committee. It is not that far-fetched to say that we will take these to the Public Protection Committee at the very first meeting of that. So this shovel game right now, and we have an obligation to the public to make a commitment of when we're going to take this to the PPC. So I don't like this, I don't know, well, maybe. Well, we can stop hemming and hawing because we've been doing that for the last 2 years since this was brought to the oversight body. And we need to make a commitment that now that this is passed and the governor has given us the authority to do this oversight, then we need to do what the public is asking us to do and make the commitment to take it to the PPC and asking to do what the public is asking us to do. So, sir, all we're asking is, when is the meeting? And if you don't know when the meeting is, then we can make a commitment as this oversight body to take it to the very first meeting of the PPC, whenever that is. Because this is why the public doesn't trust us, is when we keep making these so-called political statements about, well, I don't know, because if we don't want to do it, then don't want to do it. But we must have the will and the commitment to do what we say we're going to do. You can't just talk out both sides of your necks. Well, I really want to do it, but I really don't know. No, we say we're going to do it, so let's hold up our end of the bargain and just do it. That's what I have to say. And I'm not going to be one of those ones lying to people. We said we're going to do it. So the very first meeting is what we need to commit to. So there's my motion. I move that this body put forth this item at the very first meeting of the PPC.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there what are we?
You know, from a procedural standpoint, I don't think we had anything agendized for a voting matter on this particular issue. Are we on record of action? So I think the motion would be on the record of action.
Jeff?
And then just to add to that, the Racial Justice Oversight Body doesn't have kind of the statutory authority to dictate what's on the Public Protection Committee agenda.
Thanks, Chris. And Paul, I was actually going to say exactly that, the last point, that I don't think that would be my analysis too, that we can't set the agenda of the Public Protection Committee. And also we could get that sort of assurance that we're going to do everything that's possible, because we're hearing here from community and members that this is urgent. And that was even the language we used last time, this is urgent. So it doesn't mean that we have the ability to dictate as much as I think I'm not the only one that's saying that this needs to be addressed soon, and asking that that be considered and move forward, even if it's not the ability to have the power in terms of just partners at the table and knowing that we've come here together with that intention. So that was what I was going to say in terms of procedure.
Yeah, and then just, you know, already speaking from the CEO's behalf, we're bringing it to the PPC. So it really is a matter of scheduling the meeting. But with that being said, I think we've already had too much discussion on this already for it not being agendized. So I'd recommend we, you know, stick to the agenda, record of action, and then move forward.
Before we move on, thank you, Chris. I saw you too. Before we do move on from this, I agree with procedurally how we may not be able to do it right now, but we've already said and voted at our last meeting. And so if we're saying that not just whenever the PPC meeting is, but that first meeting, that just needs to be when we try to get it on, because we've already voted on it, so.
Thank you. Any other discussion, or I'll entertain a motion about the record of action?
I'll move to approve the record of action. This is Lisa.
I'll second it. This is Ellen.
All right. It's been motioned and seconded that we approve the record of actions. Nicole, could you help us with the roll call vote on that item?
Sure. Melissa?
Yes.
Issa?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Dinah?
Yes.
Lynn?
I abstain. I was not at the full meeting.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Shayla?
I will also abstain. I wasn't at that meeting.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Ronell?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
We have Tamisha or Lashante on. We can see. Okay, motion carries.
All right, thank you. So now my understanding is that we only have Paul for a limited amount of time. And so wanted to skip to, I think it's item 5 on the agenda. Talking about discuss, or actually it looks like, yeah, that was my thought as well. It would be 5 and 6.
5 and 6, that's what Nicole and I were thinking.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'll just give a little background on this. So basically what we're wanting to do is talk about recommended changes to membership, as well as potentially some amendments to bylaws, and there's some proposed language there. A lot of this, and Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of this stems from some quorum issues that we've seen because of various sorts of irregularities that have sort of popped up, particularly in some of the subcommittee meetings. So for one, we have a member that hasn't been able to attend meetings in quite some time that we have reached out to. That's Apollo that I'm talking about, who we have not heard back from. And because of that, there is the potential, at least according to the bylaws as they currently are, believed to declare a member inactive after a number of absences. And that sort of lays the groundwork for a vacancy to be declared, and for the process to be, the application process to the RJOB to be open. So that was one of the few things that we wanted to discuss. Also, in terms of attendance of subcommittee meetings, right, in the bylaws, I don't think there's anything that specifically talks about attending those subcommittee meetings, and the bylaws around attendance are more about the quarterly meetings, but we know that we want quorum in subcommittee meetings in order to move agenda items forward, so on and so forth. In addition to that, I think what we were looking to do was to create some language that says that even if we're missing or lacking quorum in a subcommittee meeting, the meeting itself can continue, but the action items or the votes would have to be reserved for the following meeting, right? So those are like what some of the amendments to the bylaws might look like. And finally, because I think it's probably the one of the easier points of discussion, we have members who are declared in essentially the wrong subcommittee at this point. In particular, Stephanie is the chair of the Diversion Subcommittee. She started out as a member of the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee, and so is still on the roll for that subcommittee as far as quorum is concerned. And sometimes is being asked to be in 2 places at once for quorum purposes. We don't want that to continue. We want her to continue her chairship of the Diversion Subcommittee, but need to make that official with a vote here. So that was a laundry list of sort of the items, sort of just laying it out for everyone, sort of what these issues are, what these agenda items are referring to, and looking for some guidance from Paul about how to go about sort of addressing some of these things.
Yeah, thank you. Nicole, did you have anything else you wanted to add for?
I just wanted to summarize what I guess we're essentially asking is to declare, for the body to decide if they want to declare Apollo inactive, and to remove actually three members from the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee, and that would be Apollo, Noe, and Stephanie. Apollo, because by default, if he is inactive, would be removed from that. And then Noe has shared a conflict with that particular subcommittee, and so we would need to remove him there as well to account for quorum, or address the quorum issues. And then, just as you stated, Christopher, the Stephanie, removing Stephanie from that subcommittee. And as far as the bylaw amendments, I mean, we can go to those pages too to look at it more in detail, but yeah, that's essentially what I have.
Thanks. And then I guess let's go to the bylaw changes just to go through them real quick. I think page 15 of the packet. No changes there. So yeah, just so the body knows. So the recommendation was to change the members are required to participate. That's the first change. That might have impacts to the committee since all members would be required to participate in a subcommittee. That's probably worth discussion. The next change, Nicole, was the quorum. And I think, after talking it out and looking over the county's advisory committee guidelines, I forget what they're officially called. Nicole, you probably know it better than I do. But we do have the, sorry, go ahead.
The advisory handbook, the
handbook.
The advisory.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of mirrors what our options are, that, as long as a quorum is met initially to start the meeting, we can continue to meet and have discussions, just we can't take any action items. But, one thing that I was thinking too, that might help alleviate some of the work on the committees and on the subcommittees is maybe consider consolidating the 3 subcommittees into 2, or incorporating the ongoing work into the regular racial justice oversight body committee meetings. Just something to consider, because it sounds like it's maybe too much of a time commitment for our volunteer community members to be attending, the quarterly meetings and then also the monthly or bi-monthly subcommittee meetings. So that might be worth considering, is consolidating some of the subcommittees. I think this is all, open to discussion.
Jeff?
Thanks, Chris. I would just say, as sitting with the Community Engagement Funding Subcommittee, that it has been important for us to be able to do business the way that we want to have, a fully accurate reflection of who the active members are. And I think one is simple, clearly, with Stephanie being reassigned to one where she's already chairing. But as to those other positions, right, so that I think the reality factor is that the people who are active, engaged, want to move on something, and we have those people, but just missing folks that aren't actually been involved in the process, that it is important that we make the changes. And I know that that's what we're here doing, and appreciating being able to facilitate that. And that in terms of frequency, right, my perspective participating in these meetings over time, that we've wanted to have this sort of frequency and the devoted attention of the subcommittees in order to have the progress on each of these fronts that we intend to. So I think these changes that we're proposing will help facilitate that work without reducing the frequency.
Do we need somebody to make a motion to make these changes? Is that what we're looking for? Like, if we're all good with the proposed changes?
Yeah, I think Nicole was hoping for a motion on this, and the next steps would be to work with county council to make sure that what we're proposing is legal to a certain extent, abides by Brown Act and our Better Governance Ordinance, and any other statutes that might be applicable.
I make a motion, we approve these recommendations to move forward to make sure what we're doing is legal, and move forward with it if it is.
And Cheryl has her hand up.
I see Cheryl's hand, yeah.
That's exactly where I was going. Appreciating the motion on the floor, but moving to Cheryl.
Yeah, I had a question, because Christopher, I think that didn't we talk about like alternates for some of these committees? Because I know I attend all of them, and I think that may be a way that you can make sure that you have quorum, or you keep quorum when you have people from other committees attending these other committee meetings, right? To make sure that you have quorum, or that you can keep quorum, is to make sure that you have alternates for committees.
That was one of the things we discussed this morning with Nicole, is that potentially, we would update the bylaws for it, but thought was maybe to have like a pro tem subcommittee member. So if we have another our job committee member at a subcommittee meeting that's not necessarily part of that particular subcommittee, we could, the subcommittee on the spot could make, hey, Cheryl, do you want to be, pro tem member to, X subcommittee, so they could continue their business and meet quorum. And I think that's something that
I just think, I think it's a better way to go rather than not be able to continue the business of the subcommittee, because we had that problem before where everybody showed up and then we had to like leave and not do any business that day because, there was not enough people, or we were one or two short, and there were some of us there from another committee where we could have just went ahead and did the business of the committee, and so we have to wait a whole nother month to do work. So I just want to put that out there for everybody to consider. It's better to have those of us who are part of the oversight body who are attending these other subcommittee meetings. Let's just get the work done. If we're part of the oversight body and we're attending the subcommittee meetings, I think that's a great way to do it.
Nicole, there should be any issues incorporating that to the bylaws, right?
Well, and that's why I was raising my hand, because I wanted to comment on that. So the change here would allow you to continue business, just not voting. So I'm just wondering is it one or the other? Can it be both of those in there?
Both should be doable.
Because if let's just say, Cheryl, you're not able to be there, we still need someone to assign to be a pro tem member, right? So we're still running into the same issues that we don't have an additional member to appoint because they're just not there. Where what we redlined right there is at least allows you to have the discussion. You may not be able to vote on an item, but you can continue the discussions.
Right, but I think that's also assuming you have a quorum in the first place, which sounds like that's also an issue.
Right.
But if you don't have a quorum, but you have alternates, so you assign 2 or 3 alternates, and alternate is the same as a member, so you would be able to vote. Alternates serve as a member of the body, of the committee body.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that you are very dedicated and are there at most of the subcommittee meetings, but if for some reason you are not, do we have that commitment and that engagement to have another member that's not officially appointed to a subcommittee to appoint to be that pro tem member? That's the question.
I don't know. I'm just putting it out there that I think that having alternates for each subcommittee is, you got to ask the other people there. I can only speak for me. I can't speak for anybody else.
Sure.
But I'm just saying that it's a good idea to ask everybody. Everybody's here now, so you got to ask them.
Right.
Well, that's what this is for. It's for.
Right. I think that's the challenge. If we do have designated alternates, that there is a commitment there, and there will be an expectation that, as an alternate, you're showing up to these meetings on a regular basis. I know everyone's kind of tapped on time and bandwidth. Might be doable. I can't speak for everyone. Hopefully, other members of the body could speak up and voice their opinion.
Great.
I just want to say, so Bonner said, I like the idea of having alternates. So that's the one vote.
And I see we have a little stack going right now. So Stephanie first, then Lynn, then Michael.
I'm wondering, can we have both of these options in the bylaws? Or do we have to have one or the other?
We can have both. But when you say the other option, you're talking about like alternates, like as in, Stephanie.
Yeah, so we have one that, yeah, and it wouldn't be Stephanie as an alternate, but yes.
Yeah, that works. What Nicole was talking about as a pro tem that's not necessarily an alternate. It's kind of like on the spot. You're a member of the body, not a member of the subcommittee, and you're in attendance. So we're just like, hey, you're a member of the subcommittee now for today.
Got it. So we have 3 different options then.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, so Lynn?
I was just going to say, I think it's a great idea to have alternates who are engaged and know the work, where you communicate with each other so that you know like some people are able to have proxies and we share the information, share the work, and either one can, and have this as a another option when the quorum, like when the alternates don't show up and there's still not a quorum, that we could still have a discussion. So.
Thank you. Michael?
I really like the idea of what's proposed in the red line, that business still can be conducted, although we don't have a quorum. And I also love Cheryl's idea that if there is another member of the body who shows up at that meeting, that they would have a voting, they can vote or they can participate, because this is just a subcommittee of the body. So it's part of us anyway. So it's a smaller piece. So I think it wouldn't be any conflicts or any issues having a member who may not be officially a member of that committee, if they show up, because what starts to happen is when we don't have people at meetings, or when we don't start having a quorum, now things get put off, now it gets put off, and we only meet so often, and it's just, everything gets delayed. So I think that this would be an effective and a very, very good way to make sure that we're still efficient and we're moving, and also not to waste the time of the people who show up and that are here and that make their schedule changes, and they show up and no one, the rest of the committee's not there, and it's like, I wasted my time. So I think it would respect the time of other people who actually show up. So I like Cheryl's proposal. I like the red line proposal of conducting business. So I'm definitely in support.
Thank you. I think, well, Ellen, I see your hand.
I just wanted to ditto Michael's comments and Cheryl's and reinforce Cheryl's suggestion. I think given the urgency of the work and the timelines, I think having that additional flexibility is going to hopefully really allow for things to move forward in a more efficient way. And I like the idea of proxies as well, because I know a lot of us may end up with a scheduling conflict. And I think that would really help ensure that the meetings can go on and the work can go forward.
Thank you. So I have a question that I would just put toward the group, and that is, are folks leaning more toward alternates, which it seems like would be sort of designated people? I think what Nicole was trying to say earlier was, well, Cheryl, you're the one who shows up to every subcommittee meeting, right? So that means you would make a good alternate, but we don't want to put all of the onus on you to make quorum in all of these meetings so that we can vote, right? That's a little bit different, designating an alternate to show up, and that person has to be the one who shows up every time, than what Paul was mentioning, which would be to appoint someone pro tem, which would mean, hey, you're here today, we don't have quorum, so for today, you are considered a member of this subcommittee such that we can conduct business and votes. And then hopefully next meeting we have quorum and we don't need to even, take this step, right? It's a temporary fix so that it's not one person or 2 or 3 designated people who have to be in multiple places every month. And so I'm hoping I'm doing justice to that distinction. I'm curious what folks' thoughts are there. And the other thing that I would say in terms of this idea of alternates is, given that I'm looking at what's on the screen right now, right? And when it says quorum, a quorum of the body shall be a majority of the members or their alternates. Clearly some folks already have proxies. are we just needing to sort of clarify who all has an alternate, or that any member could potentially have an alternate as opposed to the ex officio members only, or is this something that's kind of already covered?
There is an alternate section right here, and it's specific to a certain code section 24101. I'm not familiar with. Maybe Paul can specify who's allowed to have, I guess, what you consider an alternate.
Yeah, generally speaking, for most bodies, I don't want to say all of them because I don't know all of them, but generally speaking, it's typically the ex officio / governmental officials that have the ability to make alternates or have alternates act on their behalf. Just like the public defender is a public official, they're able to send someone as their deputy to represent them. Same with the Office of Ed and county administrator and whatnot. So that typically doesn't extend to a community member that was appointed based on their own personal qualifications, not necessarily their status of office or whatever it may be or position. So alternates in that sense, we could, but that would probably be I'm thinking like another body that I work with. They do have alternates of community members, but we go through an interview process and appoint them as alternates through the board process. The individual community member can appoint their own alternate. It would have to be appointed through a board process, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that clarification. I see Shayla's hand, and then after Shayla, I saw Stephanie's hand and then she lowered it. So if Stephanie, you want to speak after Shayla, feel free to jump in. But Shayla, please.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for clarifying the difference between the pro tem and alternate. I would actually like to change that. I like the idea of a pro tem instead of an alternate. Yeah, because I know, Cheryl, I know you're Superwoman, but we can't put everything on you. I know you're in all the meetings. But yeah, I just wanted to state that I like the idea of actually having the pro tem and that pro tem being a member of the Racial Justice Oversight Body. That's it.
Stephanie, did you want to raise your point, or were you? I just saw your hand.
No, actually, Paul already said something. I was going to ask about the proxies, gotcha. So that's okay. And then I have another question, but we can finish this point first.
So I guess the question I have is if the body is okay with the redlining of continuing when we lose quorum to be able to continue the discussion, but being able to push voting off to the next scheduled meeting, in addition to new language that we need to create for a pro tem member. And do you want to approve that, or do you want us to come back with that language before you?
I would recommend if the body is willing to approve it just in concept and allow staff to work it out, the details with county council, just to save time instead of going back and forth. That's just my recommendation.
Stephanie, was your question related to any of this? Did you want to?
I mean, it's related to Brown issues, but not directly.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah. But to the point of, I think that we should go ahead and vote on this. I mean, I think all of us, it seems like we're all for the concept of what's redlined right now, and then the pro tem. So I would say we should vote on it and not wait on the language.
Stephanie, are you saying we should vote on it, or are you moving that we vote for it?
They know if we were still having discussion, but I can make a motion.
I don't see any other hands. Certainly the floor is open if folks have more to discuss here, but.
Are we voting on the removal of members two separately on a separate vote, or how were you looking to do that?
I think it should be separate. just so it's clean, Christopher.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm just not, I can't make the motion, so
yeah. So whoever made the motion,
I'll make a motion.
There you go. Just so it's clean. Just so it's clean.
And I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, and point of clarification, the motion is to accept the red line language here.
For the quorum.
As far as quorum, and I think there was some, is there another section?
Yeah.
With the
it was just adding clarification. I mean, I thought this was assumed, but we add language in here to state that members are required to at least commit to one subcommittee.
Right. And in addition to that, is the motion also to accept in concept, as was just laid out, the idea that that we can have, or that you all can appoint a pro tem member to a subcommittee, and then to allow staff to work that language out as well?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant by my second, yes.
Yeah.
All right, just making sure we're clear. All right, so it's been motioned and seconded that we accept the red line language here, as well as in concept agree to the capacity to appoint pro tem members to subcommittees for voting quorum purposes. Nicole, can you help us to conduct a roll call vote on this?
Did we need to open it up for public comment?
Well, yeah, that's why I don't do this all the time, but yeah. We'll welcome any public comment. I am not seeing any. All right. So Nicole, if you could.
Yep. Yeah. Melissa.
Yes, I agree.
Isa.
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
Ina.
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes.
Dr. Walker.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Shayla.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Renell.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Just want to make sure some of the others may have come later. Tamisha or LaShante? Nope. Okay. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you all. And separately, we wanted to, I guess, go back to talking specifically about members, specific members whose positions would be vacated.
I think it was just the one member that, from a bylaw standpoint, Apollo, that technically would meet the qualifications to be declared inactive, but the body needs to move on that.
Okay.
And then separately, if you wanted to keep it separate or the same, removing the 3 members that I had mentioned, and I'm happy to repeat, from the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee.
Right. Okay. So I have a question. Is it, so I think as we were reaching out to members, so some of the folks who would be removed from the CEF subcommittee, or at least one of those, I think may have indicated that there were issues with attending other subcommittee meetings. So given this language that we just approved,
right?
Should we be reaching out to, I guess we should reach out to clarify or to make sure that either there are conflicts, or that, especially because we're coming up on a new year, if, subcommittee meetings change because schedules change, and that's something we can, address in the new year, determining the feasibility of this person showing up, or potentially we might be in the same situation in terms of inactivity.
I don't see a sense of urgency to have to move on this immediately. I think it is worth maybe surveying the full body, given this new motion to declare that it is required to be committed to at least one subcommittee to at least poll the full body to see if there's any concerns there, but that would be up to the body to decide. And I also wanted to call out, we wanted to appoint a new co-chair, correct? Was that something we were addressing as well?
I mean, it sounds like something that we would need to address. I had prepped for that one, but I mean, it's an easy thing to call out and to speak to, I think. Okay, so first was the issue of Apollo, who was appointed a member of the body and who hasn't been able to attend meetings, and who we've reached out to and have not heard back from, and declaring Apollo inactive. And so I'm curious if there's discussion, if there are follow-up questions, if there's anything more that we need to say about that before entertaining a motion to declare Apollo inactive due to a lack of attendance. And Paul has to run, so we are on our own. Is Jill here? She's here. All right, cool. So I mean, that we have some. We're not going to put it all on Jill, in the same way, but we know that she's typically able to help out. So I'm just glad she's here. That's all I'm saying.
Here, just FYI, I'm in Vermont. So I'm here though, but it's noisy.
There's some dedication. Thank you. Jeff, I see your hand.
That's extra credit, Jill, for sure. And I was just going to say that I know from having some communication with Chris and Nicole that there have been diligent efforts to reach out to Apollo to see if perhaps it's just a temporary absence, or if there's something that could be accommodated. So with that in mind, I think that's just important context. There have been more than one attempt, clearly, and given the timing that I mentioned in terms of our ability to act, maybe it's appropriate for me as the subcommittee chair to make the motion that he be no longer an active member, or to have been removed from our subcommittee roster based on that history.
I second.
You're on mute, Chris.
That is the first time that has happened to me over the course of the pandemic. I am ashamed, but also proud. Thank you. So yeah, we have a motion and a second to declare Apollo inactive due to lack of attendance. And I will open the floor for any public comment there. Cheryl?
I would just say this, and I'm going to say this about, I think there's two of them we're looking at, right? But listen, I know that people don't like saying anything or removing people, but there was a lot of people, if you guys remember, who wanted to be part of this oversight body. I understand that people's schedules change. I understand that people's commitment change, but there was a lot of people who wanted to be part of this oversight body. And speaking from somebody who goes to a lot of meetings and who works full time, I think I work in this pandemic. My schedule at my mortgage paying job is hellacious. I clocked in this morning for a conference call at 6:30 this morning. Last night I ended at 11:30. So not that I don't have sympathy for other people's schedule. I don't look in other people's handbags, and I don't look at other people's schedule. I just know that when we make a commitment, you either can fulfill the commitment or you go ahead and voluntarily resign from the commitment. So I think that I would like to either give him an opportunity to voluntarily resign from the position, or let him know that we will have to remove him from the position. I don't like removing people. I like to give them the opportunity to voluntarily resign, because that always looks better. But if he's not willing to do that, and I know you have done all the outreach, Ms. Nicole, I know you guys have done all of that outreach, then we have to make a decision from this body to put someone in place who has the ability, the heart and the will and determination and the commitment to fulfill the position. That's the way I look at it. And I don't think it's an indication of he did have the heart and the intent to want to fulfill it, but he doesn't have the ability to do it right now. And so, yeah, you know, then give him the ability to, the dignity to resign from it, and just accept his resignation. That would be my say on it.
I just wanted to reiterate that we have tried to reach out to him to give him the opportunity, but unfortunately, we have not been able to get a response back.
Then that's our automatic letter of resignation to him.
It's
I think Ms. Stephanie wanted to say something, and then Ms. Jill's hands up.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I totally get what you're saying too, Cheryl, and I was gonna say I think that's been afforded already. I mean, I've also tried to get in contact and haven't been able to. Definitely think heart in the right place, but some outside commitments have probably taken him away. So,
thank you, Jill.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the actual board order, the public document that is submitted, doesn't state like the person's not showing up to meetings. It's just a basic resignation. So regardless if somebody resigned or was resigned, it doesn't indicate one way or the other on board order. So there's nothing in the public document that would say like he didn't show up to meetings. So that's all I was going to say.
Thank you. And now I'm just going to remind everyone that we have a motion and second to declare Apollo inactive. And if there's no further public comment, I think we can take a roll call vote on that motion.
Maybe I'll just ask in the spirit of consensus, if I could, sorry, that my sister Cheryl, are you feeling that readiness here in order to take action? I feel like my take is that we have given the opportunity, but just because I'm a second on this, I felt like it's appropriate for me to clarify.
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay, well then
I'm swell.
I wouldn't have any more interruptions.
Yeah, I'm swell.
Got it.
Okay, Melissa?
Yes.
Issa?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Dinah?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Shayla?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Ronell?
Yes.
And Cheryl?
Yes. Thank you, Jeff, for checking.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all. I think next under this item, I think was the removal of some members from the CEF subcommittee. That's a separate motion, correct? Or potential motion?
Yes, well, potential. To remove, I don't know if we have to declare Apollo to be removed because by default he would be,
right.
But then Noe and Stephanie.
Right on. Right on, and that would be because Noe has informed us that the CEF subcommittee presents a standing conflict, right, with his schedule. And because Stephanie is the chair of the Diversion Subcommittee, and so shouldn't be, at least for quorum purposes, maybe not for pro tem purposes, shouldn't be on hold. You can still be a pro tem, Stephanie. You can still be a pro tem if we need you. Just keep that in mind. But
I mean, I'm probably going to still come to the meetings, but when I can't, you know, I don't want to hold anything up.
That's what we're trying to do with this motion, potentially.
I make a motion that we have these two folks removed from the roster, however that needs to be stated.
Right. Yeah, removed from the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee roster. And I will ask for a second and or some public comment.
I'll second.
Got a second from Shayla. Any public comment on this item at all? I'm gonna scroll. Don't see any hands raised. Nicole, I think we're ready for a roll call vote on this item as well.
Melissa?
Yes.
Isa?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Dinah?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Shayla?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Renell?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes, even though I was going to send Stephanie a superwoman cake.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I think the last item then would be the one that you brought to at least to my attention just earlier, Nicole, which would be potentially nominating or installing a new co-chair for the RJOB.
Yes, that is true. And it just was brought to my attention, perhaps we need to talk about NOE as well, or is that something that we want to survey offline as far as the full bodies, the impact of this new requirement to attend at least one subcommittee before we bring NOE to the attention of the full body, as far as his ability to meet that requirement?
Ah, that's right. Okay. Moving part there.
Sorry.
So
things are changing as we make motions. Things are changing dynamically. So
it's fine. Because I did actually mention that a little bit earlier. So I'll just reiterate for folks, right? Noe, not only Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Noe not only indicated that he had a standing conflict with CEF, but upon being informed about the data and diversion subcommittees, with the thought being that perhaps he could join one of those subcommittees and maybe there wouldn't be a conflict, he indicated that those were also standing conflicts for him. Is that right?
They were, but I feel like it's hard to compare this one to Apollo because we haven't afforded him the opportunity, I feel like, to resign, because we didn't have this officially as a requirement in our bylaws, and now we do.
Yeah.
So it might be worth at least affording him that opportunity to officially resign.
I think there's that, and I also, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. These things that I said a few minutes ago. Also, again, because we're going into the new year pretty soon, right? Usually there's that conversation about, does the date and time work for everyone? I'm assuming that it will continue to work for most of the people, and that we'll stick to it. But there's potential that there could be a change that would open that. So I definitely think the best way to move forward is at least to present the option of resigning or waiting for a schedule change in January. And I mean, I think that could give us a sense also of, like, is that something that know we would be interested in, or if the the idea is that I think I'm depending on what's going on with me, I think I need to move on.
Yes.
Okay.
Because he's in compliance right now, so there's not really anything we can move on just yet, I feel like.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Okay. So then back to a new potential co-chair of the RJOB at large. Jeff, I see your hand.
Thanks. Well, I was thinking about the possibility, although haven't discussed, and it's always risky, new interim public defender, Ellen McDonnell, with my knowledge of her orientation toward this work and being in the position that she is now, I think would be excellent for that role if willing.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. That's a surprise. I am willing. I am, of course, an interim, so I don't know if you have a bylaw that governs that, but I'm happy to assist if there aren't other folks clamoring.
Yeah, and just for a little bit of context there, I'll just add that what we have done historically with this group, because there are 9 community members and 9 justice agency partners, what we've tried to do is have representatives from both sectors that are represented on the body, as represented in terms of the chairship of the body. And so right now, Tamisha Walker from Safe Return Project would be a co-chair. And so I think part of probably what's prompting Jeff, in addition to all of the great remarks that he just made, is that trying to maintain that balance in terms of co-chairs.
And the fact that we're all just really clamoring to co-chair. We're fighting right now behind the scenes, Ellen.
I do see people trampling me and being sort of stepped on as it goes, Cheryl.
Lots of arm wrestling over here.
So much.
Yeah, it's a battle.
More like straw drawing, but hey.
Is there any further discussion, any more nominations, anything else that we need to say here, or potentially a motion?
Well, I'm a second Jeff's nomination. How about that? Ellen,
and I did intend my nomination as a motion. Yes.
Yeah, Ellen, you don't know my address, do you?
No, you're safe, Cheryl.
Okay,
it's under a protective order, I think.
Okay, good. I'm a second Jeff's nomination.
Any public comment? Scrolled again. Don't see any hands or any unmuting. I think we may be ready for a roll call vote on this business of a new co-chair.
Thank you. Melissa.
Yes.
Isa.
Yes.
Ellen.
I will abstain from voting.
Dinah.
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes.
Dr. Walker.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Shayla.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Ronell.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Absolutely.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously.
Well, thank you, Ellen, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Under historical circumstances, Ellen, I would usually literally hand over the hosting of this meeting to you right now. I have done it in the past, but I'm not going to do that to you today, because I know we've had a bunch of moving parts in terms of everything that we've had to cover. But Nicole, were there any outstanding sort of items around agenda items 5 and 6?
No, I think we covered it, and thank you for hanging in there. I didn't anticipate it would take this long, but thank you for your patience.
Oh, real quick.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh, we got something else.
Yep, I already know.
Real quick,
no.
And maybe Jill, if Jill is still on, or somebody could answer this. When it comes to Zoom meetings and using apps like Mural or Jamboards, are we able to use them, or does it violate the Brown Act in any way?
I will answer you the question, but you can hear the sirens.
Oh my.
Let's give it a second.
I am so sorry. We're out walking our grandson, so the ambulance just went by. You could do that as long as it's agenda on the agenda that you're going to do a sort of open Jamboard session.
Okay.
Allow public participation in it.
Okay.
Is that different than like a breakout session?
Yeah. A breakout session is different. Yeah. You can't do that in this sort of meeting.
So yeah, I mean, everyone would have access to it. It wouldn't be, something that's hidden.
So Jill, would that mean that we need to provide the link in the agenda, or would putting the link in the chat during a meeting suffice if we say that we're looking for, or indicate on the agenda somehow that we're looking for collaboration via Jamboard?
Yeah, it's just an agenda item. You can put, Jamboard, whatever you're going to do Jamboard on, and provide the link in the chat. And then you can also accept, public participation and input after the meeting as well if people struggle with that, or they can put their comments in the chat as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for remembering that, because as you can see, I didn't. And that question's coming up because—
That's all right. We got each other. It's all good.
Thank you. That question, just for context, is coming up because in one-on-ones and I think even in other meetings within the county, Jamboards are being used in this way. And so folks have mentioned that they would like to have the option of using something like that, a collaborative tool like that, so that folks who need some time to process or don't always feel comfortable speaking up in a meeting, but do have something to meaningfully contribute, can be heard still, or can, participate. So I would love to begin utilizing that option ASAP. Okay, I think that all we may have left to do is receive reports from the 3 subcommittees. That's agenda item 4, and that would start with Jeff and the Community Engagement and Funding Subcommittee.
Hi, everybody. So I'll just check in to say that excited about the work that we're doing in the subcommittee. And I know that with some of the recent changes that we just made in terms of our lineup, that we're going to be able to be all the more effective and efficient in making this work go forward. And that's definitely been public comment that our subcommittee is liking the agenda, and some frustration from public comment about let's make it happen. We've been talking about it and agreeing to these things. We need to light a fire and make it happen. So we'll continue pushing, and that's just outlined a little bit in this status report that I know certainly the data subcommittee knows that this shared project, and I think everybody at this point and the full oversight body knows that we're working on having rollout of the data that's been obtained by the data subcommittee, and have real robust engagement and distribution of that information, and then processing, receiving input in terms of where we go next and what the questions are that we need to ask. So we've been trying to really be intentional in how we do that so that it's not superficial and that we make real use that can have an impact of the data that's been hard won, in a sense, by the data subcommittee that took the work to obtain it. And now we're being intentional in trying to use it to the best of our ability to move the agenda forward. And we have steps along in that process of identifying potential co-sponsors for the event in terms of orgs and reaching out to those networks, and also just building credibility as well as intentional input of what the content will be, more than just saying, please roll out to your networks and let them know to come, but what should it look like as it happens. Also, pleased and very confident in having Renelle Ellis as our co-facilitator from our subcommittee to be joining with Shayla Bonner as being the facilitators of the event. And I think that that'll just be terrific in terms of how we can meet those goals. So that's on the community listening front. We talked about the second bullet point of the structural changes. I'll say that we're in process of, and I don't mean to hammer out right now, but just in our subcommittee working out who may be a vice chair or second chair position in case the same sort of concept to step in and lead meetings if there is that situation. Perhaps that's something to be considered by other subcommittees themselves. And we're in the process of that, not asking for approval here as much as just letting you know that that's something that's in the works for us. I did include as a attachment to this report the updated language of our community capacity fund guidelines. And you can see we're talking some conceptual things in the title there. Could this be more than just money in terms of how it's presented? We've been thinking about it. And when we've been bringing the last models to this full oversight body, talking about it as more than just money, but maybe the language of having this as an initiative, really focusing on some of the technical assistance and peer support that would be there in like a cohort kind of concept, and really coming with that framework rather than fund, which is sort of suggesting you apply for money and get the money, and having this be something that's structured as more holistic than that. So that's, again, it's not a complete reorientation in terms of what was in mind at the start, as much as maybe messaging language in terms of how it's considered. So this is coming to this group with that. And that building language you see also at the top of, maybe that's reflective of the concept that we really want to be encouraging to those orgs, those potential participants, that this is expanding beyond your traditional networks. And this is really meant to be expanding access, even if you felt that you as org or you as person who's applying feel that maybe this isn't for me, that we really want to have it in the sense that it is, and that we're trying to go beyond what the traditional network. And you see that in the language in the last paragraph also. The bold language there is what would be new. So I don't think we're really asking for approval sign off here as much as trying to give the opportunity for input from this oversight body, and just also status update in terms of what that work is and what has been happening. And of course, for good reason, it takes some time to iron out what this will be, because it will steer what comes moving forward. So I'm glad that we've been in that process. I'm just looking back to next steps from this report, which is also the Youth Advisory Council. That's another important campaign for us. And we had really great input from Representative of Burns at our last subcommittee meeting, kind of talking about some other local models of what is happening and what we might be able to learn from in terms of how we move forward. You see those notes there also about having a continued learning and led by youth that would be ultimately at the helm here, and that throughout the process of developing, it will need to be steered by youth. So we're trying to have, again, not superficial and really meaningful engagement and input and acting with intention, and really appreciate Steph's role in particular. I'll just give a shout out to. While you'll be not our CEF official member now, you're integral to what we're having happen here, and the outreach there is super important. So if there's anything else that I have here, I don't believe so. We did already take the actions that were requested, and I've gone through that material. So happy to answer anything, of course, about that, and inviting everyone to join. You're all welcome, Pro Tem members, anytime. And I'll leave it to the next subcommittee report.
Before we move on, Jeff, just had a couple of questions. I think overall, I think for the CEF, so if other members need to chime in, they're welcome to, as far as I'm concerned. So has there been any feedback from any community-based organizations or coalitions at this point in terms of what they think the listening session might need to look like, or how they might want to partner or be involved with it?
Good question. I can say that I know the Racial Justice Coalition's steering committee meeting, we're scheduled to have at 5 this afternoon, and that'll be some of those relevant networks to be talking about. I have good reason to believe that there'll be enthusiasm and desire to participate. But also, I know that there'll be others that are on our subcommittee that might be able to speak to what's beyond those that are at our steering committee, the coalition steering committee table, that is.
Thank you. And I certainly, if anybody, I'm not gonna put anybody else on the spot, but if anyone else has been having those conversations and you have something to add, we'd love to hear it. And that was, I think that was it. I would just add that when Jeff said, they had representatives from the Burns Institute to talk about youth-led advisory bodies, he was not talking about me this time. He was talking about Joanna Lowry, who's been attending some of the meetings. And for those of you who haven't met her already, probably over the next month or so, you should have an opportunity. She's helping out with some of the lift here. So,
and much appreciated. Absolutely.
Christopher, there was a question at the data subcommittee about, I forgot, Shayla, she asked a question. So it was, I forgot her exact question. Maybe Shayla remembers. It was about if the community engagement, the CAF committee asked questions about what the community expects from the listening session. Something like that. Shayla, do you remember what your question was?
Yeah, I was, I think in the last meeting I had asked Chris, had there been a poll to see what community had wanted to get out of the listening session, whether it be, some folks are it's more easy for some folks to retain information by doing slides, or some it's just like, questions or whatever the case may be. But I had asked, had there been a poll that was done to see what community actually wants to get out of that meeting?
That's right. Thank you both for bringing that up. I think my answer at the time was that, as Jeff just indicated, there are some folks on the CEF who agreed to reach out and to attempt to make those connections with identified community partners to get some of that information and to have those organizations literally be part of the design of what this session looks like and how it flows. And which is, exactly why I asked the question to Jeff, right, about what some of those conversations have been. I think I framed it a little bit differently. I think that's some really good framing that you got there as that conversation goes forward this evening or, whenever else, right, is not only could you help us or give us some sense of direction as to how to do this, but what are you hoping to get out of it, right? And how do we facilitate that? Stephanie, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was gonna say pretty much the same thing. And I think what could be helpful too, because one of the things that we talked about is just knowing that folks also learn in different ways, and how do we create more accessibility to the information that we're sharing, and basically like not just showing a PowerPoint, but how are we creating different avenues to share the information that we have, and also gather the information that we would like the feedback that we would like to receive from the community.
Right on. And, for the record, Stephanie, just to show that, we got each other in the spirit of we got each other, right? When we went to the data subcommittee, I did mention that, and I did lift up the very example that you used. I'm not gonna say it again, but I said it in the meeting, in terms of, a way that we might sort of get out of presentations and information as usual, and make sure that folks are leaving with takeaways that help their understanding and empowerment for any advocacy or next steps that they think are right. Jeff?
Yeah, just to say, I appreciate, Chris, you're raising what's happened so far in terms of input, and I gave a pretty general answer in terms of I'm expecting that we'll have more. Looking where we are with time right now, and knowing that there are some community voices here, as well as other non-CEF oversight body members, I kind of maybe would invite a little bit of brainstorming now, if that seems appropriate with facilitation, just in that, we're always looking for the time to sit down and try to do it. And we've got folks here right now, and we moved somewhat swiftly through the other parts. So I would, if it's appropriate, invite input from anyone beyond what we've talked about in terms of what the sorts of things they might want to hear, or to be asked, or ways to be presented that would be meaningful, if there's space for that.
Yeah, if you're asking me, I don't have any problem with that. I'm never gonna have a problem with, hearing from community or from the public about what they want to see and hear in these spaces. Stephanie, is your hand still up, or did you not put it down from the last time? All right, Stephanie's hand is down. Cheryl's hand is up.
I think the biggest thing that we talked about, especially data committee and even at the CEF committee, Jeff, is that it was in presenting the data at the listening session is what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish, right? What are we trying to accomplish in presenting this data? Because it's one thing just to give people a bunch of information, a bunch of numbers, and it's another thing to convey something to the public. What are we conveying? And I know personally is that there are people behind these numbers, right? There are actual human beings behind these numbers, people with lives. There's young people. There are people with, there's young people, there's Black and brown people, there are living human beings behind here who have a story that we're trying to tell a story. And how do you tell this story? And so like Ms. Stephanie said, you can tell that story with spoken word. You can tell that story with music of the culture. You can tell that story with more than just throwing a PowerPoint on a screen and reading graphs. Some people are very visual. Some people need numbers. Some people need the numbers in a graphical representation. So you gotta know your audience. And that's where CEF comes in reaching out to the public to find out what is the best way that we can use that so that the data subcommittee is better informed when they're putting together this presentation for the public and are able to better know the audience so that we're not putting something together from our aspect, because Ms. Denise and the team, they did a great job of getting the information, but it doesn't matter if solamente yo solo hablo español and nadie se entiende. So if I'm the only one speaking Spanish in a room where nobody understands me, well, what difference does it make, right? So that's why. So you can speak Latin, German, French, Spanish, German, or another language in Portuguese in a room where you're the only one talking. So we have to put it in a language that the people who you're speaking to are going to not only comprehend it, but understand it. I remember the saying from Nelson Mandela that said that if you speak, you can speak to the people. If you speak in their language, you can speak to their hate, but you speak in their, if you speak in the words that they understand, you speak to their heart. So it's not just enough to translate it, it's enough, it's a transliteration, is different from translation. So you have to say it in a way that people can be engaged and involved and they know what our point is. So what is our point? What are we trying to get to? What do we want them to understand about the numbers? What do we want them to understand about the people who are in this criminal legal system? And what is our charge? Because our charge is not just to look at the numbers. We are trying to reduce the gap in the number of people who are coming through the criminal legal system. And we want to get that across to the public, but also to make a difference in the way that our Board of Supervisors are passing policy maybe. So I think that that's what we want to, we were hoping that the community engagement subcommittee can help us get that information back to the data subcommittee, and so that we can better put together the presentation. But then on the diversion committee, we have information that we are trying to take these definitions and make them more universal across the whole county. And then so we're taking those definitions and putting those into the presentation as well, so that we could tie all of the committees back together and delivering all that information to the community. Right, Stephanie? Make sure I didn't miss something. And Christian.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that's the question that we're trying to get from you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Mr. Leach, I see your hand.
Yeah, since Jeff invited input from the public, I thought I would say something. So it seems to me that in any kind of a public forum on this, that certain amount of data is important. There is a lot of data in the Racial Justice Task Force final report, but I would suspect that most people who would come to this forum wouldn't have really studied that. So some selection of data similar to that, but updated a bit from the final report would be appropriate. I wouldn't overwhelm people with it though. The other thing I think that would be useful is to have a handout. I don't know how you do handouts on virtual meetings, listing I think it was 19 recommendations that were finalized for the Racial Justice Task Force. And after each of those 19 recommendations, a brief summary of the status of where the county is in terms of progress towards meeting those recommendations. That's what I have to offer.
Thank you. Denise?
Yes, hi everyone. First of all, Cheryl, thank you for the shout out regarding the work that ORJ has put in for creating the data or pulling together the data. We didn't create it, but we did present it in a graphical form. I do not think, though, that the data subcommittee, and I'll leave this to Becky and the data subcommittee themselves, are in a position to translate the data that we've acquired into an approach that makes sense for the community. My sense would be, and my recommendation about this would be, that the Community Engagement Committee would have a sense of how that data is best presented, and that they create what they need to make that presentation and get that information across. Now, I am happy to work with somebody to understand better those charts and what some of those current stories are. But I think to create a presentation for somebody else, we have experience doing that, and we've been doing it for a good period of time now. And I think it makes more sense for it to be more efficient for the CEF to prepare their own formal presentation. They're happy to use the charts that we've created, but not to put that onus on our unit to do that, because I just think it wouldn't be as productive as it would be, because you know the audience better than we will. I have no other thoughts about that.
Thank you, Denise. Jane? Jane, you're on mute.
Think that I would know by now. Pardon me, Jeff, because I maybe should have made this comment at the rare times I was managed to get to your subcommittee meeting, but I would urge you not to call it a listening session. I think the community is kind of tired of, there were listening sessions around the task force, as I recall, a few years back. The new Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice has had listening sessions, and I'm concerned that the public might be a little impatient. You're listening to us. We're telling you about the racial inequities, the problems, the injustices. If this is a forum to present updated data and better information than was available when the task force first formed, and I know that one of the concerns in that task force was that the data did not exist and the data was not forthcoming. And so if this is truly a presentation, a report of this hardworking board and its subcommittees, maybe the public needs to know this is what it is. Now, this doesn't mean there's going to be no public input and that we don't want to hear from you, but I gotta say that there's a lot of confusion out there among folks who don't follow things as closely as some of us do in the county. What's this Office of Racial Equity? Oh, there's a Racial Justice Task Force, and the racial just, you know, the supervisors have declared racism a public health problem, and we're getting words and words and words. And my concern, and one that I know you probably are fully aware of, is how do you cut through that and to make it clear that there's some new information and there is an effort to actually act on the new information that's been gathered. So I don't know, I just keep hearing about listening sessions, and I wonder if I mean, this could just be me. So, but again, I hate to represent where there's just a couple of us here, or three, I guess 3 people from the public, if I'm counting correctly. But it's just a concern.
Maybe I'll just unmute to say I appreciate that. And I think as with Doug, I am inviting input from everybody. And I think it's important that we don't kind of have apathy in how we're presenting this, and people seeing that this is worth coming to, and how it's presented is something new moving forward, rather than kind of recycling of in terms of how it's presented. So thank you, Jane.
Yes, thank you, Jane. And is there any further discussion on this particular item before moving along to the other subcommittees? All right, I don't see any at this time. So I think we can move to the data subcommittee report.
Thank you, Christopher. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Becky Bachikis. I'm the Director of Student Programs for the County Office of Education and the Chair of the Data Subcommittee. And thank you, Nicole, for projecting our summary there. During the last quarter, we really have been working on 3 main projects, and one is to publish our data that we have been collecting. Ms. Denise was mentioning earlier, the data that we have collected and that we have brought to this group before has now been published on the website. And there is a link in the packet there. That blue URL right there is the location of the data. And also attached in the agenda packet is a copy of the letter that we sent to the CBOs, kind of releasing and sharing a little bit more about what that data is. And so we definitely want to have that data be widely shared, and we hope that sharing the location of the data there, that everyone here today will be able to pass that along to at least 3 people. If you all pass it along to 3 people, we'll spread it out pretty quickly. No, I just made that up randomly, but you know what I'm saying. So if we can pass it along, make that location known, then that will kind of be something to add to the knowledge of the community about the current state of affairs and regarding the inequities in terms of our arrests and incarceration in terms of felonies and misdemeanors there. So that is one of the projects that we've been working on regarding the website. And so at this point, we're sort of finished with that part for now. Obviously, as we produce more information to disseminate, then we'll add more reports in that location. But it was kind of a big milestone to get to the point of having data to report and also having a location clarified of where it is. And so that was one project that we've been working on. The second thing is that we did work to clarify and codify our request of data from the district attorney's office. And I want to just thank Andrea Tavernier and Simon O'Connell for attending our subcommittee meeting while we were drafting the final version of our request to the district attorney's office. And so that is also included in this packet, a copy of the letter that was sent to DA Becton's office, asking for particular data points that we had determined that were required in order to keep working on our work plan. And then thirdly, we have been working on a project regarding training local law enforcement agencies about adolescent development. And in that project, I particularly want to point out the helpfulness of Ms. Cheryl, Ms. Patrice, and Ms. Melissa from the Sheriff's Department. And what we have been working towards is trying to find a training that could be offered in a pilot way to selected law enforcement agencies surrounding adolescent development. And one thing that we learned is the importance of having a training such as this be what's called post-certified, which is sort of the way in which the continuing education of law enforcement counts towards the hours that they need. And so we found that there is not actually currently a training that is certified through post for adolescent development. And there are, what we are working towards is trying to come up with a provider that we could then support through the process of becoming post-certified, and then work with the piloting LEA to implement that training. So that's kind of where we're at on that point. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is just that tonight is the mayor's conference presentation, and due to Chief French being on leave, we did have a conversation about who would be taking her place in terms of the presentation. And so Michael Pearson, who is here today, my understanding is that Michael, you will be presenting alongside Tamisha tonight at the conference. So that's kind of an overview of what we've been doing in the data subcommittee, and happy to answer any questions or receive any feedback.
Denise?
Yeah, I just want to put another shout out there to Michael, because this was basically an ask of him last week in light of the changing circumstances with the initial presenters. And, you know, Michael, for you to step in this kind of venue at the last minute and represent the entire body as well as the data subcommittee in an ask. I just want to express my gratitude, our office's gratitude, and just say thank you, way to go, we appreciate you. And I look forward to being there and seeing how things go. For those of you who haven't noticed, Nicole put the link for the mayor's conference meeting into chat, so you all have access to that. And the meeting starts at 6:30 tonight. Again, thank you, Michael. We look forward to seeing you there.
All right, if there's nothing further, it looks like we could move forward to the Diversion Subcommittee report. Oh, Cheryl.
Well, you know, I'd say something. So there's a lot of work that went into this committee. So I know that Nicole put the data link in the, we finally have a spot. I know everybody's been asking about where the data is residing. So thank you, Ms. Nicole, for putting in the link there. And thank you, Ms. Denise, and there's a lot of work. I just have to tell you, these are a lot of data, and these are a lot of updated data. For those of you who don't know, thank you, Ms. Becky. There's a lot of work, and on this committee, I know all of the committees are working, but the data, for those of you who weren't around for the original task force, we've been crying about this data for years, and trying to get this was like pulling teeth. So we have been trying for a long time to get updated data. Thank you, DA Becton. We wanted this data from her office. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows where it's residing right now, because we wanted to find a central location for this. So I just hope everybody goes and at least checks it out, that that's where it is. And there's another thing, Sir Jeff, that we wanted to make sure the community knows where it is. And I know Miss Becky said that she said she was joking, but she's not really joking. We want to make sure that everybody points this out and sends people to look at this. Don't wait until the community, I can't say listening session. What she said we're supposed to call this forum, a community forum. We don't want people to wait till there, but we should be sending people to this website to look at this data, because it's updated, and this is not the stuff that was in that report from a few years ago. And there's a lot of work that went into there. So yeah, yay. And thank you, Michael, for going tonight. Appreciate it. And Ms. Tamisha too. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Stephanie, I think we're ready for the Diversion Subcommittee.
All righty. And much appreciation, as has already been said, for all of the work that all of the committees have been doing. So really quickly, we had our kind of finalized the presentations for diversion programs that are happening in the county. The last presentations that we had were for adult programs, and we had the DA's office present on some of the programs that they have been running. And then at our last meeting, we had ORJ as well as the Public Defender's Office present on COCO Lead Plus. And one of the things that COCO Lead is not going on right now, but one of the things that we noticed from all of the presentations that we've had from the youth diversion programs to the adult diversion programs is that there is a gap in services to transition age youth. And so one of the things that we actually just had a planning meeting this morning for what we want to focus on at the next meeting. But knowing that there is a gap and knowing that, you know, both youth services as well as adult services also need to be made more robust, but wanting to have a little bit more focus on what transition age programs need to look like and what models are out there. So one of the goals for us is to look a little deeper into what are some of the programs that are happening in the Bay Area, and eventually possibly some model programs that may be happening outside of California. And then also for us as a committee, just to do a little bit more dreaming of what we would like to see happen for those transition age young people. And just kind of give us a chance to just kind of imagine and reimagine what are some of the things that we would like to see. So hence the question about the Jamboard and trying to figure out how we can create a little bit more engagement for folks to participate. That is one of the things that we'll have at our next meeting. So we can, and we'll have some specific prompts to help hopefully kind of spark some of that imagination and dreaming for how we would like to better serve our transition age young people in the county. So that's pretty much what we'll be focusing on in the diversion committee. We'll probably also talk a little bit about some of the things that we would like to prioritize as we go into 2022. A few of the things that have been mentioned a little bit throughout this meeting is around language. And so really thinking a little bit more about some of the language that we've created with like our definition for diversion. And then as we start looking at criteria for diversion, and then how that can also filter into the greater body with the overall language that we're using in the county around how we're addressing young people and adults that have been impacted by the criminal legal system, so that we can all be using the same language. Any questions?
Yeah, Stephanie, that's Ronell. Just want to just make sure you're aware. I don't know if you are aware, but yeah, I believe those TAPE population resources should be more robust and more suitable and more available. That's something we've been working on with probation over here at HR 360. Just wanted to say that we have already implemented designated times for groups and facilitating different types of groups, AOD, SUD, and also clinical groups, and also process groups over here. So that's already taking place, and that's already, up and ready to go. We're just trying to get participants locked in. So just for, you know, FYI purposes, I just want to put that out there just so you know that that's available here in our office. And, you know, we trying to make that happen as well.
Thanks, Ronell. It's good to know that there are some services happening. And just to that, it's how do we make them even more robust? And so hopefully you can join the conversation at our next meeting as well. And I saw Denise's hand up.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Stephanie. I just wanted to point out, first of all, thanks for all the great work in looking at this. And one of the things that the data subcommittee noticed, and this is what led to our desire to have a pilot for law enforcement, is just noticing that arrests were so skewed from the standpoint of the racial distribution, and particularly for young people. So that TAG population is so critical. So how is it that we, even before diversion, understand the interaction that happens with young people and law enforcement? And so we did some work surrounding that, and that's where the pilot program became, was basically considered from the standpoint that very, very few law enforcement agencies train their population on juvenile intake brain development. And it's really, really different than adults. In fact, from what I could see across the country, most law enforcement agencies on average spend only 3 hours of their training on juvenile brain development. And for those agencies that have a more reinforced, vigorous training surrounding how to interact with young people, the outcomes and the need for diversion is even less than it would be otherwise. And the success of diversion is even greater when you have individuals in the community and law enforcement that have a new set of skills, basically, to deal with TAE rather than adults who have different ways of rationalizing and speaking about the things that they're up against. So what I want to say is this is great that what you're thinking along these lines. There's a lot of synergy in this with what the data subcommittee is trying to do. And I hope we can continue to think about it further and work together, because I think it's really important, as evidenced by the fact that Melissa Clavoon from the Sheriff's Office on this board has basically said that there is no post-certified juvenile brain development course that is available right now. There's just none. So it's maybe time.
Thank you, Denise.
Is there any public comment on any of the above? Cheryl?
Let me ask a question. So the governor signed into law that you have to be older now to become an officer, right? You gotta be, I think 25 now? Yeah. So is that, do we think that that's gonna make a difference, especially when it comes to this kind of, in this criminal legal system, or the programs that we do, probationary programs, diversion programs? And I'm just interested from Ms. Ellen, DA, Ms. Stephanie, I know you deal with these programs. Do you think it's gonna make any kind of difference now that that is required to have some kind of age maturity? Well, we presume maturity with age, but that doesn't always go hand in hand. But will it make any kind of difference? We had this conversation last week in another group. Will that help, hinder, what? Just wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question.
There's Ms. Melissa, yeah.
Oh, I think the idea behind the law is, you know, of course, to have that prefrontal cortex formed and to have folks that are really have all their executive functioning. As the mother of a teenager who's a boy, I'm now really seeing this in play. And so I think I'm hopeful that it will make a difference. I imagine there will be some pretty robust data collection efforts around it. So I think I appreciate the spirit and the philosophy behind the law. And to Denise's earlier points, I do think having additional training and recognition in the post-certified classes for law enforcement and for everyone throughout the system on these issues of brain development and science in that regard is so critical.
Thank you. Melissa?
Well, I will agree with what Ellen just said too about the older age. And as part of my current position, I do all of our hiring interviews or our final interviews for our candidates. And we have a variety of ages of people that come into law enforcement. And one of the things that really, I think, helps is when our candidates come with previous experience in anything. It doesn't really matter what their experience is, but the more life experience they have, the more well-rounded they are. And you can see that in the way they interview and the way they interact with other individuals and how they perform in the academy, which is just the first step of their career. So right now we can hire, you know, until January, when the new law goes into effect, we can hire deputy sheriffs at 20.5 years old, because by the time they complete the basic academy, they'll be 21 years old. And 20.5 is definitely young. And you can, you know, obviously we enjoy seeing people that are young and motivated and energetic, but when you also pair that with our extended retirement age, which is now 57 years old, that is a long, even though that's still relatively young for retirement, it is a long career field to be in a fairly physical related type of job where you're, you know, wearing a lot of gear, and there are a lot of physical requirements for it. So I agree. My personal opinion is that the 25 age will get us additional candidates that have some life experience, whether it's educational or in other careers before they come to us. So I do hope that we'll see some changes based on just that higher age range.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on any of the subcommittee reports? All right, so that leaves one last thing for us to do is item 7. But before we do that, I'm gonna ask you guys to indulge me just briefly while I say that last quarterly meeting, you know, I think I issued some challenges to the RJLB, right, around, you know, what looked like some burnout, and rightfully so. I mean, you guys, you know, have a lot of work to do, a lot of spaces to be in, so on and so forth. But trying to encourage folks that we could get this work done, that we could move these things forward, that, you know, that if we all pitch in, that if we all get involved and make sure that we're involved, not just in meetings where we report things, but in the planning and in the work and the legwork that leads up to them, that we can actually move this stuff forward. And, you know, I don't want anyone to get complacent, but I will say since that meeting, I've really appreciated, you know, the efforts that I've seen from so many of you, and some, you know, some folks who haven't been able to step up in those ways in the past, right? Really answering the call. So you basically heard them all already. I just want to echo the sentiments that were offered for the data subcommittee. Really been working, you know, not even just this quarter, but, you know, this year, the data subcommittee has been putting in some serious work. The CEF subcommittee, despite the quorum issues, you know, has long been sort of a conscience for this group in terms of especially making sure that things that make their way here from public comment, you know, get moved forward in a meaningful way, right? That action is taken. And the diversion subcommittee as well, right? So you heard about Michael stepping up to the plate for tonight's meeting. You heard about Ronell, you know, who is also, you know, one of the new members in the most recent class, right? Who's agreed to help co-host the forum that we're gonna have in January. You know, Tamisha and Michael also being a part of that planning session that Stephanie was referring to for, you know, as far as the diversion subcommittee. I'm really seeing folks, you know, get invested, get involved, get their hands dirty with bringing about the types of policy and practice changes that we need. And I applaud that and appreciate that and want to be just as vocal about that as I am about encouraging folks or, you know, sort of calling out when I'm seeing it sort of taper off. So keep up the good work. We're going to move into the new year, I think, ready to take on the challenges that we know that we have that are not going to go away, but that we can actually do some real work, you know, that we can be proud of. And I applaud everyone who's been a part of that. If you want to be a part of it and haven't been so far, let's definitely talk about how we can make that happen, how we can get you directly involved with the work, because we know it's the right thing to do for communities, for children, for adults, for, you know, for everyone. And with that, I will thank you all. And if there's nothing further, I think we can adjourn the meeting with about a good 47 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. I guess we can start saying happy holidays too.
Yeah.
Somebody's got their tree up already.